gentlemen, welcome to the studio this morning, this afternoon, this evening, whenever you are watching this. I'm going to bring you another beautiful painting of the desert Southwest today. Here it is. This is what we're going to paint just on the other side. Join me over there. Let's get to it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we are. And to get started with, you saw the brush that I'm using is Raphael Aquasoft brush. The paper that I'm using is Arches 140-pound cold pressed paper. And I'm just dropping in some of this cerulean blue just to make a nice gentle sky. I'm going to just fill the entire sky up with this. A little darker at the top of the page, a little lighter down towards the horizon. As the light gets further away from us, the sky gets further away from us, it gets a little bit lighter back there. Just lift off a few areas. I'm not going to make some real clouds here, but maybe some lighter areas. And you'll see I've painted over the back two mountain peaks back there. They are so far back in the distance that maybe there's a lot of atmosphere between us and those mountains, and it makes them a bit bluer. Now, if you look at the reference photo, there's a fair amount of green growing off the side of these hills, these mountains, these cliff sides, and I'm going to drop some of that color in here. The majority of this green is cobalt green, and I guess this is a good time to let you know that I'm using M-gram paints here. I'm mixing in a little bit of Hansa yellow, a cold yellow, just to make this color pop a little bit, give it some variance. I don't want all of this green to be exactly the same. But then I'm going to bring this green down. I'm going to change my colors a little bit, warm it up a little bit, bring it towards me. Again, this is mostly cobalt green. I did dip into a little bit of phthalo green there, and to change the yellow, a little bit of gamboge, but it's cobalt green, Hansa yellow, and I'm just getting the foreground in. And I'm doing this because the sky is still wet. I would love to go right into painting the mountains, but I want a hard, crisp edge. So I've got to let that sky dry a little bit. There's a little bit of a lazy river here. This is just ultramarine blue with a little bit of sepia in it to tone it down a little bit. And now as my sky is drying, I can go back in and start to put in some of these beautiful oranges and red colors. I'm starting with a little pyrrole red. Where I need a little brown, it's a little burnt umber. The pyrrole red, a little gamboge in there will make a beautiful first pass for the colors of these hills, these mountains, these beautiful, beautiful structures that are formed here. I'm trying to get my camera to focus again. I'm still having trouble with my camera. I think the problem with the camera is it wants to autofocus and it's looking for a face. Everything wants to focus on people's faces nowadays, and it's not finding what it wants. So it's having a little bit of trouble here. And again, just mixing various oranges for these distant hills, or for these hills. And the distant one back here, I'm going to put some color on, and my hope is that that blue will still make them look pretty far away. I can't let them get too strong, the orange get too strong. It'll overpower some of that blue. Yeah, I'm just going to take a little bit of that off. There it is, and it looks already as though that's way back in the distance. It definitely looks like it's further back. And I could have painted this orange all the way down and then put some green over top of it, but in this instance, I'm going to let that green stand on its own, and I'm going to just paint right down to that line, and you'll see in the end that green is really going to pop out when I get down to it. I've got a few people here sitting on this little plateau, so I'm going to paint around them. I could paint over most of them, as long as I'm going to paint them with a little darker clothes on. then I could go ahead and paint over them if I wanted to, but I'm just going to leave them here. And I'm going to draw my color back into that green. Maybe in the end you'll be able to see through the trees that are there. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. Just finishing up the oranges that are in here. Got a little bit of a ledge on this side that I'm trying to paint in. And I'm going to have a little bit of one on the other side. As long as these two colors here are slightly different, they'll look different in the end, and that ledge won't run into the bit behind it. All right, so there's my first wash. Everything is on there. It's dried up nicely, and I can start to add in a second layer. So my second layer of orange, I'm going to get a little bit darker. Instead of just using Pyrrole Red and Gamboge or Hansa Yellow, I'm going to mix in a little bit of Maroon Perylene. It's just going to take that orange reddish color down a notch. And you're going to see that it's going to make it look like there's maybe some deep ravines in here somewhere. Leave a little bit of highlight on the ends of wherever these hills come down, these mountains come down. My reference photo, there's a little white spot right there, so I'm going to leave that. The brush I'm using right now is a Zen Art brush provided by our friends over at Zen Art Supplies. These are nice quality brushes. Come to a nice point, even a nice big brush like this. This is a size number 8, I believe. It comes to a very nice point and holds quite a bit of water. So I'm happy to use these brushes. There we go, and that sticks out and comes into the foreground now, and so we can start to add some layer to the hills behind us. And I'm going to darken on one side and blend to the other side, and that's going to create a nice layering effect, and you'll see it happen right here. There we go. All of a sudden, 2 quick layers back there. It didn't happen quite that fast in real life. I've sped this up just a little bit so that the video doesn't drag on for hours and hours. But you're still getting everything you need to know how to paint this. And here's our distant hills. There's a touch of orange. I guess it's a warm gray back there. Maybe a little on the blue side, but it still has an orange tint, so you can see that it's part of this mountain range, but it's definitely blue and pushed way back there. I'm just gonna drop some color in here. We'll be able to make these mountains, these hills, look like anything we want them to. I don't actually know if they're mountains or not. They're certainly stunning features, I get that, but I don't know if they're big enough to be called a mountain per se. And yes, I turn my page around quite a bit to make it as easy as possible to make the brush strokes. And there we go. There's some basic mountains on the left-hand side. Now, on the right-hand side, we can do more of a fill, just a second layer on everything to really get that color the way we want, because for the most part, this mountainside is in shadow. So we can just do this however we want. Let's just put all of the color on here. And there it goes, right down to those bushes and whatnot that are growing at the base of this hill, this mountain. I'm not sure exactly what this is called, but there it is. This is all in shadow, and this face goes something like this, that these 3 people are standing on. So let's paint that into. There it is. There. Now they're on something. And we'll give it just a little color to the top. but not letting those touch each other, and maybe blend that back just a small bit. Very good. All right, now let's look and see what we can do now. Mixing some olive green, a little phthalo green. I'm going to put some yellows in here also. There we go. There's a little Hansa yellow, a cold yellow. There's some trees on the far side of this little creek that runs down here. So I'm going to drop those in right now. And there they are. And we'll come back and fill these in a little bit later and give them a little bit more definition even, but there they are. And as long as we're working with some greens, let's add some extra color to these bits that are growing on the side, down the side at the base of these hills or mountains, whatever we're calling these. There we go. And yeah. Let's see. Let's keep going with that. I'm going to make a little bit different green for this side. I want the green that I'm painting right now to have just a little bit more blue. I don't want it to be a blue-green, but just maybe a little bit more blue to push it back behind the trees and bushes that are going to be right in the front. And then as soon as I get away from these people, I want to warm that right up. Add a bit more yellow into it. Being careful not to go over the red that I just did. And all the way out, there it is. And we've got some distant hills back here. This should be a bit warmer. It's all in the sun. Just dropping some basic colors in here. Just like that. hoping to punch up the colors here. There's a little blue in there that I just put in to push that back just a little bit and try to make some depth and bring that straight on down. And quick as that, we've got a beautiful scene developing. All right, some more of my cobalt green, a little bit more of my Hansa yellow, maybe a little bit of olive green in there. And I'm just trying to put another layer here on the desert floor. And since it is the floor, I'm going to mix in some ochres down here, a little bit of that burnt umber. If I throw in a little bit of red down here, that's fine too. This floor's got a lot of stuff growing on it, the floor of this little valley here, but there's still plenty of dirt and dust and everything down here. So I'm just dropping in some darker colors, some brown, some ochres here and there. And of course, this comes right over to our creek. I'm just going to fill that color in. I'm going to define our creek bed on the back side with a little bit of burnt umber. And then I'm going to define the far side of the creek nearest us. Here it comes. And then I'm just going to drop some color on the inside of this little creek bend. It's mostly green. There's some browns in there, a lot of yellows. I'm not going to add a lot of details. That's actually pretty far away. If it's some grasses or whatnot, you're not going to see too much of it. I just realized as I'm doing this, I'm watching this back, doing the voiceover, it is a bit jumpy at this speed. There is a bit that looks a bit manic as I'm turning the page around. And now I'm just dropping some of the shadows onto the trees that are here. Maybe just separate those a little bit. If you wanted to, you could use a brighter color, yellow, to separate these. These are just the trees on the back side of that creek. And maybe a little bit over here. Maybe there's a little texture over there. I don't know. And now we get into the really fun stuff. This is where everything comes together. We're going to put some lines on these hills. It's going to give them a lot of texture and form. Right now they have a little bit of form from the top side of them and maybe a little bit from the green underneath. But putting on these lines, just deciding where the cracks and crevices in here go and drawing those on. A little arc here, a straight line there, a dot or two there are really going to give this a lot of depth without doing a whole lot of work. There we go. And you can see all of a sudden now there's a lot of texture. There's a lot of pattern to that on the right hand side, and I'm just going to continue doing that on the left hand side. Where I want a crevice, I'm just going to draw a vertical line. Where I want to see some of the cracks, the striations, it's a horizontal line. And where I think there's a bend and it goes back into the distance, I'm just going to kind of bend that around and point it back towards a point, an imaginary point at the center of the painting. But this is where everything starts to get its texture and look like those hills normally look. And again, I'm not following a set pattern. I'm not trying to make it look exactly like our reference photo over there on the right hand side. But I'm trying just to give it the interest that I think it needs to make this look like an interesting rock feature. And like a place you would see if you were to visit the Desert Southwest or to visit Zion National Park. So we've got a few here, and if you really wanted to, when you got closer to the front here, you can make the cracks a little smaller if you want. Now I'm dropping in. These are the trees that are here in the front. A little dull-ish color, maybe. I'm trying to use the side of my brush to make these interesting patterns. And a little more yellow in here. Let's brighten that up a little bit, and all of a sudden, there we go. Now it looks like there's a tree growing in front. There's maybe bushes on the top of this plateau that these people are standing on. Well, I still haven't painted the people yet. We'll get to that in just a second. Now these bits back here need maybe a little bit of something on them. And now I can get to painting the people. This guy here has got a blue shirt on. Let's paint that. This guy's a red shirt. And the next guy, I think maybe he'll have a blue shirt also. No? Oh, I'm going to paint some blue jeans on them. You can see their legs. They're sitting there. Let's draw some pants on this guy. I'm not trying to be too careful about this. When you look at them and you see that they're a figure shape, you'll call that good. Your eye will just call it good. You won't draw any additional attention to it. Maybe these guys cast a little shadow here. Let's draw that on, paint that on. Just a bit of detail, and we're about done with this. And with that, I'm going to say thank you for joining me in the studio. Check out the links below, my Etsy store, my website, social media down there. Trying to turn the studio green. To that, I'm trying to put windmills or solar panels on the top of the studio. If you want to donate to that, you can go to the coffee fund. That's specifically set up for that. And with that, I'm going to say thank you, and we'll see you back here next time. Bye-bye.